Hey, what's going on, everybody? For today's video, I'm going to be doing something quite a bit different, and I'm going to start off with a little bit of an announcement. As a lot of people are already aware through Facebook and speaking to me at the Linwood Fly Fishing Show this last weekend, I've officially joined forces with my good friend Bart Morrow of South Sound Skiffs. South Sound Skiffs, up until this point, is a boat-based sea-run cutthroat guide service here in the South Puget Sound. I've worked with Bart over about the last 18 months or so, kind of behind the scenes, doing a lot of social media stuff, photography, some website stuff, just kind of helping him get the business up and going. But here in the last couple weeks, we have officially cemented a legal partnership, and now I am 100% on board with the business. I will be going to captain's class this coming Monday, so just a few days. And as soon as my captain's license arrives in the mail, I'll be running our second boat. Now, I say it's a sea-run cutthroat guide service because that's what it's been up until this point. We've had a game fish license and nothing more. However, as I make this video, we are actually in the process of finalizing the details for leasing a salmon charter license. Anybody that has fished the South Puget Sound knows how many resident coho are there. Especially this year. I don't know that I've ever seen so many resident coho. And the thing is without a salmon charter license, you cannot legally target those fish. The problem comes because it's really, really difficult, if not impossible, to target sea-run cutthroat without catching the coho and some blackmouth on occasion. Bart and I, as we sort of cemented our legal partnership recently, we kind of just made the decision that we needed to find a license to either purchase or lease and just not worry about having to avoid the coho. Because frankly, it's near impossible. Lately, the fish have been schooled up, really, really tight schools, so it's actually made it a little bit easier for us to stay away from them. But the fact is that if you're fishing for sea-run cutthroat in the South Sound, you're gonna catch salmon. There's just no ways around it. So we wanted to get the license to make sure that we're totally legal, we're not skirting any gray areas, and we can legitimately target these fish. And also because we just love to fly fish for them. Personally, there's nothing I'd rather fly fish for than coho. And the numbers that are around in the Sound this year makes it just an extremely fun fishery. So this really gives us the opportunity to advertise for it, openly target them, and then in the summer when the migratory fish start coming through, it gives us a lot of options as far as where we can fish and the fish that we can target. So it's extremely exciting for us. It's exciting for me to now officially be on board and be going to captain school, which is something that I've dreamed of for a good long time. I'm excited to be working with Bart. We kind of make a really good team, I think. We kind of, we each have our strengths and weaknesses, but we kind of mesh well together. We're on the same page with most everything, and then we're just kind of different enough in style and thoughts regarding the fisheries that we just seem to make a really good team. So with all this news and excitement, and especially with the salmon charter license getting squared away, we're looking at March 12th is kind of our goal to have this all ironed out, and we'll begin booking and running salmon trips. So I thought today I would make a video tying a resident coho fly. This is basically a Comet style pattern. It's certainly nothing that I have invented or originated or anything. This is just kind of how I've been tying them this year, using the dubbing brush and the rubber legs and the glow-in-the-dark body. It's been a very, very productive fly for me off the beach when I'm targeting resident coho. Like I said, you will catch cutthroat on this fly. However, I am tying it specifically here with coho in mind. I'm tying it with a really, really short tail, glow-in-the-dark body that really kind of makes this fly pop in the water. And the bright pink color that the coho have really responded well to. So the first step, I'm going to set the camera up and show you how I spin up the dubbing brush, and then once I get that complete, I will move everything back over here to the table and actually get this fly tied up. So I've got the camera moved around here, and so I'm going to show you how to spin up this dubbing brush. You can see I've got the Stonfo dubbing brush device set up here. I've got it kind of permanently set up at my tying station. so I can kind of jump on here and spin up a brush whenever I want. Makes it pretty convenient. I've already got the wire attached to the turbo spinner, strung across the table, and it's just hanging on a bobbin here. If you've seen my video on the Stonfo dubbing brush device, you're already familiar with how this thing works. So I'm not going to go into great detail about that. If you're interested, I do have a video on that. It's worth checking out. This thing's pretty darn slick. So this is a real simple brush. It just uses some hot pink starburst fibers from Fly Tires Dungeon. This stuff is basically equivalent of like light bright dubbing. It's kind of a flashy, fine sort of a material. They sell this in what they call fibers, and they also sell it in dubbing. The fibers is just longer version, so it's like 4 to 5 inches long. I try to buy the fibers in the colors that they sell, just because then I can cut it to length. I have a ton of the dubbing too, and it's great stuff. The other ingredient is just going to be some bright white mini bug legs, also from Fly Tires Dungeon. Been using these things a ton this year. I really like the mini bug legs. They move well. They don't overpower a fly. Like some rubber legs are really big and bulky, and on smaller flies they just kind of look out of place. I've been putting these in a ton of dubbing brushes on all kinds of different flies. Really like how they move and kind of what they add to the fly. So to start out, I'm just going to take some of this material, this starburst fibers, excuse me. You can see it's kind of a long, 4 to 5 inches, which is perfect for dubbing brushes because I can cut it as needed. And I'm just going to kind of take it and make sure that all the fibers are going the same way, which they already pretty much are. Now I'm going to take and just trim off these ends just so I can kind of start relatively square when I cut this. And I'm going to make this about 1/2 inch chunks. It's probably better to err on the side of length, because you can always just trim this once you get it tied, but you can't make it any longer. You can experiment depending on your desired result. I'm trying to make this to be fairly sparse for the brush, and then I'm just going to take and lay this right center line. I'm not going to offset it at all. I don't do a lot of offsetting in my dubbing brushes at this point, because I'm making these on small enough hooks. These are small enough flies that I don't worry about getting a lot of taper and natural taper into it from the dubbing brush. I'm not sure how effective that would be on these smaller sea-run cutthroat size hooks anyway. You can see it does not take a lot of this stuff. A couple chunks is enough to spread out and do what I need to do. Actually, probably a little bit much. Really don't want this to be overly dense. I'd rather make up for the density by making another wrap with the brush than have it be so dense that I can't control how thick and large it is. Okay, I got that spread out. Now I'm going to take some of these mini bug legs, cut off a chunk, and I like to make these about 3/4 of an inch, maybe slightly longer. Again, you can, after you've got it tied, you can adjust it and trim as however you like. I like to kind of leave some longer, trim some shorter, kind of mix and match a little bit on the fly. And now I'm just going to take and lay these one at a time, because I have not found a better way to do this. It's a little bit time consuming, but you don't want these legs bunched together. You want them individually trapped between the two pieces of wire. It creates a much better result that way, and you will it'll be more durable. The wire will have each rubber leg trapped individually instead of several of them together. So I'm putting these about maybe 1/16 of an inch apart, give or take. I like it to be nice and leggy, but you do want to have a little bit of a gap between the legs, just so, like I said, so it can get spun up properly. And so I will lay these down the entire length, and I'm going to go on ahead and just fast forward through this so you don't have to watch it, because this is not terribly exciting. Okay, so I got everything laid across. Rubber legs, I kind of did a good job on that one, but sometimes I'll have to take the tweezers and kind of make sure that everything's spread out just where it needs to be. So now I'm just going to stretch this out, throw a little bit of dubbing wax on this wire to help keep everything kind of in place. And with this simple of a loop, it's probably not a big deal that I even need. Probably don't need wax, but it's just habit at this point. I like to do 4 or 5 wraps around just to make sure that's good and locked in. Get my junk scissors. Now I like to kind of make sure that everything is still in place and kind of centered where I need it. And I like to lock this spring to start so it does not compress. And I just find that helps get everything going and tight and situated a little bit better. And now I'm just going to kind of give this a few spins. Loosen up my table. What I've been doing is I pinch this wire, because as soon as you drop the table there's a little bit of slack from where the table is keeping the wire tight. So I like to kind of grab and pinch this wire so nothing moves when I drop it. And then just start spinning it up. And I spin it until this foot, since the spring is locked, the more I spin it, this just tightens it up and it ends up lifting this foot off of the ground, off of the table here. So I spin it until the foot's a little ways off, and then I give it first sort of gentle brushing. Everything is pretty well locked in, but you don't want to go too crazy on this first one. Spin it a little bit more. You see I'm not getting a whole lot. Most of this was already on there from previous brushes. Not pulling out a lot of material when I do this. It's pretty well locked in. You can see kind of how sparse this is. This is exactly what I'm looking for. I don't want to overdo it with the material. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and loosen this spring so it'll compress. And then I'm going to spin it a little bit more until this compression spring is about maybe 3/4 of the way. that's all there is to it. Cut that off and remove this end. You can see I have a nice, sparse, leggy brush that I will use for the collar of this fly. So I'm going to move the camera back and we'll get back into tying. So now that I got the dubbing brush spun up, I'm ready to tie this fly. I apologize in advance. I've had a cold this week, so my voice is a little bit off. Took my son to a concert last week, then I had the Linwood Fly Fishing Show, and then got a pretty good cold. So my voice has been pretty strained this last week and a half or so. Anyway, to get started, I've got a Gamakatsu SC15 size 2 hook. This is kind of my go-to hook for most flies. It's a nice short-shanked, wide-gap hook. It's a size 2, but it's closer to a size 6 in most other hooks manufacturers. For whatever reasons, these ones, they tend to run pretty small for their size, so I use the size 2s on these an awful lot. I've got a 4mm 5/32 inch brass bead, and I'm using some light pink 10-aught Vivus thread. Really like this 10-aught Vivus. I use this for pretty much all of my sea run cutthroat and coho flies. This stuff is for 10-aught thread. It's super strong, which I really like. I like the colors it comes in. I like everything about it. So to start off, I'm just going to lay down a thread base. I'm using some new scissors that I just got here this last week or so. These are Wiss brand, W-I-S-S, and these are the kind that you just, it's got one finger hole, so you hold them at all times. These are like $5.50 or $5.97 on Amazon. They're really cheap, and so far I've really liked these scissors. They're super sharp, really easy to tie with, and yeah, I'm becoming a big fan of this style. I've never used this one finger style before, but yeah, kind of kicking myself for not getting into it a little sooner. So for the tail on this fly, I'm just going with some pink Predator wrap. This is actually kind of a barred. It's like pink with clear bars on it. They sell it as pink. That's what the package is called. And for this, I'm going to go with a really short tail. Ordinarily, I tie most of my flies with a tail that's about a hook shank in length. I'm going to try to get this closer to maybe half of a hook shank. Since I'm tying this one specifically for resident coho, and those fish are known to come up and short strike on flies, I don't want a long tail on there. I find that if you fish a longer tailed fly, you're just going to get a lot of short strikes. So I really don't want much for the tail at all. I'm going to kind of just measure this out because I want to tie this in right behind the bead, just for the sake of a nice uniform body. Just tie that right in there and then wrap my thread back. Wanky fibers there, but you can see just a really short tail. You don't need much. And then for the body, I've got about 6 strands or so of pink glow-in-the-dark Flashabou, and I'm just going to tie that right in at the back. And then I'm going to use my rotary feature of my vise to just wrap this up the hook shank. Make sure none of that tail gets trapped. And this stuff has a tendency to want to kind of splay out and spread apart, and that's not a big deal because I'm going to be going over this with UV resin. Wrap this most of the way up the hook shank. I'm going to leave enough room for where I'm going to tie in my dubbing brush and make a few wraps with that. So now I'm going to go ahead and coat this. This is Solera's Bone Dry. It's similar to like the Loon Flow or Clear Cure Goo's Hydro. It's a really thin, almost watery UV resin, and it's great for this kind of thing. Coating bodies. I'll use it when tying certain flies to lock materials in place, especially if I'm tying flat wings, or it just adds a lot of durability, and it, like in this case, it kind of gives this something of a little more glisten and shine on the body, which I like the look of it. I think the biggest key is the durability that it adds, but so just put a thin coat of that, shoot it with the light. And then the last step is going to be to take the dubbing brush that I just spun up here, tie that in kind of right behind the brass bead. I'm going to do 2, maybe 3 wraps. Now I don't want this to be super thick. I want it to be fairly sparse. And with each wrap, I'm kind of just going to stroke the fibers back so that none of the fibers or the legs or anything gets trapped. Let's see how one more looks. This is why I like to make my brushes pretty sparse for this kind of thing, because then I can adjust and add. If I want to make it a little fuller, then I just do another wrap. Cut this off with my crappy old scissors. I've taken some red paint pen and kind of marked these all up so I know which ones are which. You don't want to use good scissors on cutting a dubbing brush wire. Trust me on this. It will dole up your good scissors in no time. So now I just want to kind of make sure that I push that cut wire end down so I can cover it up with thread. I'm always paranoid that if I leave it uncovered it might somehow nick my leader or cause an issue. I've never had that problem, but better safe than sorry. Now I'm going to take some of my favorites, some Sally Hansen's Hard as Nails. I'm just going to run the thread a little bit here. Usually do a couple wraps and then I'll do the whip finish. At this point I like to kind of take and just sort of spread this out, and I can get an idea of the length of some of these legs, and then I'll kind of come in and trim these up a little bit. I don't want them to be super long. I like to kind of have them be at different lengths to just find that it moves a little bit better that way. And that's pretty much it right there. Like I said, this is a super easy tie. I like doing it with the dubbing brush because once I make a brush, I'll get a good 10, 12, 14 flies out of a single brush, depending on how many wraps I end up doing with it. But I can sit down and crank these out super quick. I've been tying them in different colors. Chartreuse, I've been tying them in all white. Pink and chartreuse. I've tied some in olive and darker colors, but I find for the resident coho that the brighter colors have been producing better for me this year. Anyway, So it's basically a Comet style fly. Nothing that I have invented or created or anything. This is just sort of some material combinations that I've been using in colors that work really well for resident coho. Tying it this way with the short tail and the durable, you know, the UV body and the glow in the dark makes this thing really pop in the water. Fish respond very well to it, and you can catch a whole lot of fish on this fly before it's ever going to fail. Quite frankly, the way this is tied, the hook is going to get dinged up and be bad long before the rest of the fly will. Just because there's really not much that a fish can do to this. Yeah, they could chew the tail up a little bit, and you know, this fly would fish just fine with the tail completely removed. So it's, you know, it's really not a big deal. So there you go. Give this one a shot. Add a few to your box. If it works for you, leave me a comment. I'd love to hear about it. Along those lines, I really want to thank everybody for coming out to the Linwood Fly Fishing Show over the weekend. I met a lot of people who subscribe to my channel or who have watched my videos, and it was really cool getting to meet people and hear feedback. Hearing that, you know, people appreciate the videos and that they've been able to make use of them was really cool for me. So thanks everybody that came out and supporting the South Sound Skiffs booth and my new partnership there. And so there you go. Hope this one works for you. As always, thanks for watching.